بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to the series of talk on the virtues of Masjid Al-Aqsa. We start again today with a poem. O beautiful city, O holy city, let them not pollute your purity. May Allah protect you, O city so fine. O Jerusalem, are you not the essence of Palestine? Lovely Palestine, will you lose not Jerusalem, your sweet flavor? To save her from crime we shall all endeavor. We suffer with you, O mighty land, but fear not, to save you united we stand. Poisoned fruit they feed you to make you sleep. Awake, awake, O Jerusalem, your children weep. Majestic Jerusalem, we weep to see you grieve, but rejoice, the perfume of freedom you will soon achieve. You search, you listen, but your children you do not hear. Yet you seek them, so vivid, so sweet, so dear. You call to them to hasten, hasten, to return to Palestine and resurrect the nation. Your children pledge to uphold your title. O Jerusalem, Palestine's most beautiful treasure, to free you from aggression will be this Ummah's greatest pleasure. The essence of the importance of Jerusalem, as we've mentioned, emanates directly from the Holy Quran and of course the teachings of the Prophet ﷺ. And one aspect that binds us all is the fact that Masjid Al-Aqsa was the first Qibla of this Ummah. And this is mentioned of course in the Holy Quran, and we learn from the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ. Throughout the Prophet ﷺ's life, while he was in Mecca, he turned his body towards Al-Quds for prayers. The Prophet's biographers state that he used to stand towards the southern end of the Kaaba, so that while he was in prayer, he used to face Jerusalem. The Kaaba used to be in front of him. The centrality of Al-Aqsa Sanctuary for Muslims is not only greatly emphasized by this fact that it was the first Qibla, but also by the fact that all the prayers conducted by the previous generation facing Masjid Al-Aqsa remain valid. Further, the hadith emphasize the respect of the first Qibla, Masjid Al-Aqsa, and this makes it incumbent upon Muslims to continue with love and affection the reverences of Al-Aqsa Sanctuary. Now, unfortunately, the hadith most of us quote when we're referring to the first Qibla of Islam is to say that after 16 or 18 months after Hijrah, the Qibla was changed from Al-Aqsa to the Haram of Makkah. What that makes us think is subconsciously we think that the Prophet ﷺ only performed Salah for 16 to 18 months facing Masjid Al-Aqsa. And this could not be further from the truth, because throughout the Prophet ﷺ's life in Mecca before Hijrah, he used to face Masjid Al-Aqsa for Salah. And we also know from the seerah that although Salah was made farz in the night of Al-Isra al-Mi'raj, the Prophet ﷺ immediately after Nabuwah used to perform Salah. And there is a biography and quoted by Ibn Ishaq that a man came to Mecca and he asked Al-Abbas ibn Abdul Muttalib and asked him when he witnessed the Prophet ﷺ with two other people as to what they were doing. And he turned around and said, I have never seen anybody before do this, and these are the only three people, and they were the Prophet ﷺ, Ali radiallahu anhu, and Khadija radiallahu anha. Three of them were the only three Muslims in this world. They were performing Salah facing Masjid Al-Aqsa. So again, as we learned last week, that the history of Masjid Al-Aqsa begins with the creation of mankind himself, Adam al-Islam. We also understand that the Qibla of Masjid Al-Aqsa begins with the Nabuwah of the Prophet ﷺ right from the very inception of his Nabuwah. So within the framework of Muslims is the idea and concept that Masjid Al-Aqsa was the first Qibla, But the Prophet ﷺ himself spent 12 years of his Nabuwah in Mecca, and thereafter the rest of 10 years in Medina Munawwara. But of those 16 to 18 months while he was in Medina, he also faced Masjid al-Aqsa. In effect, for nearly 13 and a half years of his life, the Prophet ﷺ faced Masjid al-Aqsa for Salah. What we're trying to say here, that most of his life, the life of Prophet ﷺ, while he was performing Salah, he spent majority of that time facing Masjid al-Aqsa rather than the Haram of Makkah. I'm trying to emphasize here for us the issue of Masjid al-Aqsa, and I'll remind myself and all the listeners that this is not at the expense of the Haram of Makkah or Medina Munawwara. They have their own elevated places, but we have to build up the love of Masjid al-Aqsa. And the Holy Quran in Surah Al-Baqarah has a great long verses in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us the merits of why the Qibla was changed and how what impact it has. And there are three hadith that we really need to emphasize upon, in which the concept and idea of the Qibla, the change of the Qibla was. And one hadith quoted by Sahih Bukhari, it's a very long hadith and we need to understand this. It's quoted on the authority of Al-Bara ibn Azib, who says that when the Prophet ﷺ came to Medina, he stayed with his grandfather's maternal uncle from the Ansar. He offered his prayers facing Baytul Maqdis for 16 to 17 months, but he wished that he could pray facing the Kaaba. The first prayer which he offered facing the Kaaba was the Asr prayer in the company of some people. Then one of those who had offered the prayers with him came out and passed by some people in a masjid who were bowing during the prayers, Asr prayer this is. He said, addressing them, "By Allah I testify that I have prayed with Allah's apostle facing the Kaaba." Hearing that, those people changed their direction towards the Kaaba immediately. Now this is Masjid al-Qiblatain in Medina Munawwara, and it is something that we need to, whenever we go for Umrah or Hajj, to visit Masjid al-Qiblatain and to remember that this is a place where the Musallis, while they were in prayer, changed from the Qibla of Al-Aqsa to Qibla of Masjid, the Haram of Makkah. And it's also maybe be befitting in there to remember and make dua for Masjid al-Aqsa by facing the Haram of Makkah, to say that the Qibla that was once ours, it has become very difficult for us to visit, and make dua that Allah take you, that He has brought you to Masjid al-Qiblatain and He's taken you to the second Qibla, the Haram of Makkah, that He also takes you to the first Qibla, Qibla of Al-Aqsa. And you know, the history of the change of the Qibla is quite in depth and quite important for us to understand and comprehend. And Abdullah ibn Umar narrates that we prayed with the Prophet ﷺ for 16 to 17 months. Then Allah ordered him to change his Qibla towards Makkah. And before changing the Qibla, when they changed the Qibla, there was a lot of, by the non-Muslims in Medina, a lot of jibing and teasing of the Muslims, that now you have changed your Qibla, how can the prayers of those who faced Al-Aqsa be accepted? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, through the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, He informed the people that all the prayers that were made facing Masjid al-Aqsa are not abrogated, and they will be accepted in the court of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's also telling that Al-Bara, while he was in Medina, after the first treaty of Aqaba, they went back to Jerusalem. They went back to Mecca, and on the way, what happened was, Salah time came, and he felt a strong urge not to pray towards Masjid al-Aqsa, because he felt that with Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in Mecca, and they were Ansars going from Medina to Mecca, he felt that it would be better to face the Haram of Mecca. And he was the only one in the group who changed his Qibla alone. The rest of them carried on praying towards Masjid al-Aqsa. When they arrived in Makkah Mukarramah, the Ansars obviously secretly then approached the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and Al-Bara approached the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and told him what he had done. And the Prophet turned around to him and said, "If you had done what you were instructed to, then that would have been your Qibla." A clear instruction that he should have not changed the Qibla without having had the prior commands from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This also gives us a very strong emphasis that the Prophet ﷺ did not face the haram of Al-Aqsa, Masjid Al-Aqsa, as his Qibla because he wanted to. He did this because he was commanded to do by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the fact that the Prophet ﷺ after Hijrah did not change the Qibla without waiting for a command from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is indicative that it is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who had made Masjid Al-Aqsa as the first Qibla for this ummah. And only when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded the Prophet ﷺ to change the Qibla did the Prophet ﷺ change the Qibla, despite the fact that the Prophet ﷺ in his heart of hearts after the Hijrah felt that it would be better for him to be facing the haram of Makkah for Salah, but he still had to wait for the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to change that. Now, just to emphasize the fact of simple prayers of Masjid Al-Aqsa, we learn from the histories that apart from being the Qibla, Jerusalem has served many prophets and has been honored by their presence. In particularly, we know directly that from the hadith earlier mentioned that Adam al-Islam visited Masjid Al-Aqsa. Ibrahim al-Islam migrated there. Ishaq al-Islam raised his family there. Dawood al-Islam with Sulaiman al-Islam were the kings and the prophets of the region. Zakaria al-Islam was the Imam of Masjid Al-Aqsa. Yahya al-Islam, who was a son of Zakaria al-Islam, also performed Salah in Masjid Al-Aqsa. Sayyidatina Maryam also resided within Masjid Al-Aqsa, and that is where she received the glad tidings of the birth of Isa al-Islam. And of course, Isa al-Islam was also connected to Masjid Al-Aqsa. So therefore, the connections between these great prophets and Masjid Al-Aqsa and its surrounding areas extols the virtues of Al-Aqsa. Muslims hold all these prophets in reverence, and because all these prophets are connected to Masjid Al-Aqsa, you can see the reverence and the importance that Masjid Al-Aqsa gains in the hearts and the minds of a believer. And its greatness, as I mentioned to you, doesn't simply stem from minor events that took place either in modern history, but it goes back to the creation of mankind himself from Adam al-Islam and all these great prophets who are mentioned in the Holy Quran. And as Muslims, we do not differentiate one prophet from the other, apart from accepting the fact that Prophet ﷺ is Khatimul Anbiya, and he is the leader, is the last of the prophets, and is the leader of all the prophets. But we treat all the other prophets as equal, and all these great prophets had great connection from Adam al-Islam, Sulaiman al-Islam, Dawood al-Islam, Ibrahim al-Islam, Yaqub al-Islam. All these prophets have had a direct and indirect connection with Masjid Al-Aqsa and the surrounding areas of Jerusalem, and therefore which is very important for us to hold close. And regarding Dawood al-Islam, in Surah Sa'd, there is a beautiful verse: has the story of the litigants reached you, of those who entered the private chambers by climbing over the wall? As they came upon Dawood al-Islam and he was frightened of them, they said, "Be not afraid, we are just two litigants. One of us has committed excesses against the other, so judge rightly between us, and be not unjust, and guide us to the right way." This event is narrated in the Holy Quran in Surah Sa'd, as I mentioned, where Dawood al-Islam was in his mihrab while he was busy reciting, praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The mihrab referred to here in the Holy Quran, most people believe, was within the sanctuary of Masjid Al-Aqsa. The mihrab of Dawood al-Islam within Al-Aqsa Sanctuary is thought to have existed, and we don't exactly know where it was. But this is how amazing, alive the history and the geography of Masjid Al-Aqsa brings a believer close to all the prophets that are mentioned in the Holy Quran. And of course, the glad tidings given to Maryam al-Islam about the birth of Isa al-Islam was also taken place in Masjid Al-Aqsa. And there's another verse in Surah Al-Imran whereupon it says, "Thereupon her Lord graciously accepted Maryam and honored to her a goodly growth and placed her in the care of Zakaria. Whenever Zakaria visited her in the sanctuary, he found her provided with food. He asked her, 'Maryam, how did this come to you?' Because there were fruits out of seasons. There were beautiful fruit out of season. She said, 'It is from Allah. Allah provides sustenance to whom He wills beyond all reckoning.'" again, this great miracle, where did this take place? This took place in and around Masjid al-Aqsa. Therefore, it is imperative that this blessed land, this blessed area, is something we should also derive benefit from. And we should all make dua that Allah take us there to visit this place, so that we can gain from these great blessings that Allah has bestowed for this ummah. Jazakallah khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.